see if I can share. It's going to share my screen. So if everyone here didn't know, this is going to be a chat, a discussion. So I don't have a presentation. So if you want to either unmute yourself to participate, that is going to be the point. So if you don't want to participate, there's no huge pressure, but the idea is to sort of have more of a discussion around the future of cities in the US, specifically, can be specifically around the US. I'm based in Los Angeles, but also can be about maybe where you live, can be about the things that you see, the things that you hope for in the city that you're in, given the new reality we've sort of been pushed into. So I would love, I would love to, I know some people, if you just want to, you can use your video, you can use your chat. I'll give a little background about why this is interesting to me. So as you see, my name's Jackie. I have been working actually mostly in the tech sector, but financial technology for the last 7 to 8 years. And recently, after living in megacities like Mexico City and Sao Paulo in Latin America, I have moved back to the States and been spending more time here the last couple of years. And as I've been refocusing, having that experience in emerging markets and other places, thought, well, this year is going to be a really important year politically, and now even more so with how we live. And I've just been seeing so much recently around people taking the time now to say whether they've been fired from their job, whether they have been now been pushed to fully remote, or and then maybe now knowing that they might be remote for the near term or medium term. A lot of people asking, why do I live where I live? What does a city provide for me? And what does a city mean to me? Does it mean community? Does it mean access to education? Does it mean access to opportunity? And now that a lot of things are going digital, there is an opportunity to think a little bit differently and think, well, is there maybe another place that I could live, that I could maybe have my life, have some of the things I want to have as part of it, and then be able to sort of make, whether it's economically, educationally, online. So I, for one, I've thought about this a lot. I enjoy a lot of freedom to travel around and to be a little bit more of nomad. But I have, for example, a couple of friends who live in New York who are now interested in living in places like upstate New York, in more rural, smaller towns. I have friends who know that, the coronavirus is going to be up and down. We might have different waves come through. And they kind of want to make sure they have more green space. They want to make sure that they're able to walk in a backyard, plant a garden, do things like that. And so with those needs and the uncertainty, I just think there's a lot of creativity and interesting dialogue that can come from this. So I wanted to set that conversation up and sort of ask the question, how are you thinking about the place you live right now? Have you asked the question or thought about the why? And then, do you think about the future of where you live and how you live given this time? And then we can go from there. If anyone wants to chime in. Do we have people on listening? I can't really tell. Hi.
Hi, I am Lily, and I am actually, I just flew back from Bali to China because Bali, 80% of the population is depending on tourism, and the tourism dropped 94%, I think, in April.
Right.
And, the expats has already set up the kitchen, to support people who cannot afford food now. So it's kind of a, has not peaked and staggering situation at the moment. So it's predicted that 70% of the population is going to be in cities by 2050, right?
Right.
And of course, there are people like you and me and maybe some other people who, like the people you mentioned, that we would like to go to, the periphery, go into the nature, or and stuff. So I, I'm in between China and Bali. And, in China, I'm mostly in big cities. And then I'm in Bali, where it's like a really interesting hub with so many interesting people, right? And for me, I feel like it's like I'm living in the cloud. I want both worlds. And
Yeah.
I know this deep, some sort of deep interactive sort of mechanism, right? And also the VR and AR sort of wearable or chip or whatever it is, down the road is going to somehow change this social connection and this kind of container, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yeah, I just stop here. So I'm interested.
Yeah.
I live in the cloud, and I love that.
And are you saying the VR, AR potential technology so that you can be in a place like Bali, or be more in a place, or be where you are now?
I think people have preferences, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm a nature person. I love
Mm-hmm.
nature, you know.
Yeah.
But I think, like, for example, um, you know, right now it's like deconstruct and reconstruct, and you need container for this deep, like maybe even nonverbal, right? Like a kind of
Yeah.
interaction. And that kind of stuff is not really available. I mean, Zoom is as much as we get right now, but like with the VR and AR, you probably can deeply connect, right, with
Right.
people,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, yeah, from all parts of the world, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to be empowered by digital currency and digital infrastructure as well, right?
Right.
That the corporation is going to go away who don't adapt, right? And then the new
Exactly.
kind of long tail is going to recrystallize or something.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious, I mean, in the US, there's a lot of sort of information jobs that there's, even from down to maybe someone who's a customer service and works in an office, they can do that from home now. Do you see similar trends in China or in Asia in general? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, hugely, hugely. I mean, like Ding Talk, for example,
Mhm.
Alibaba's Slack,
Mhm.
they're going to hire another Ding Talk this year because that's how much their business has gone up, right?
Yeah,
And then Zoom is another example, right? From
yeah.
a few hundreds of thousands now to like uh, 200, 200 million, right?
Hmm.
Subscribers now. It's pretty substantial. Yeah. So definitely is there. And I also feel that we are like co-shaping the future, because the oldest paradigm in the system, right, it's not because of technology, it's because of the mindset, right? It's the
Yeah,
way. And the new one, we are right on this crossroad that we could actually help to co-shape the guiding principles and also the mindset. But is that really happening? There are different forces right now.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I think I'm so interested in that because I read Andreessen Horowitz or Andreessen's Mark Andreessen's Time to Build, and for me living in the U.S., I find it so interesting that there's all this discussion around technology and we've built so many tech companies, yet you look at our cities and you look at sci-fi Westworld that's being built, and he even writes they had to go to Singapore to find examples of what the future of cities looks like, even as like a dense urban center. There's a lot of people who are now thinking about alternative ways of living altogether, but even dense urban centers, I find it interesting that the U.S. in a lot of ways isn't necessarily on the front end of the cusp of that. So, yeah, I find that super interesting. I don't know if anyone else has a thought or an idea about where they live, maybe if they are, even if they're in a different country, about a city. I recognize I can call in Esteban. He's lived outside of the country and now lives back in the US too. Esteban, I would love if you just shared your quick experience of working in sort of like a off the grid community, and I mean you have a lot of experience generally around this, and just thinking about how that influences you in how you live in the US, or how you think about, cities in the US as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so for context, I lived and ran this community in rural Panama. It's called Caluyala. I can write it in the chat. And it's sort of this eco community, sustainable town, and it was built with the principles of new urbanism. Urbanism just sort of talks about walkability and how to design cities for a phrase that we really liked was collisions per capita. So it's right, how do we like run into people and have those meaningful interactions? So yeah, I think working at this eco community sustainable town, I think it taught me a lot about some of the lessons from the pandemic actually that we're sort of experiencing now of like, what is it like to live off the land? What's it like to have a better relationship or a stronger relationship with the land that we're on? So it's like, if that's growing food, or if that just is like understanding the how to like build a space that's meaningful for you. I think there's also with Kalyala, in terms of thinking of cities, I think a lot about the caves and commons. So I think about like what's in private space, like how do we build spaces that are private, the caves, and then how do we build meaningful common spaces? And I think a mixture of those two is good. But yeah, but I think it's tough. It's tough. I love the perspective from China and Bali. I think that's really wonderful. And I wonder if there is. I would assume after this there is a bit of a shift away from these huge super cities and more to like, I think eco communities and intentional communities have always been sort of like a subculture, and I wonder if sort of that is rising in some bits, if people are more interested in some of those styles of life.
Yeah, I know. I think that's super interesting as well. And I was reading the other day a New York Times article that was talking about, after some of the major wars in the US, there's always been a really strong surge of intentional communities and communes, just this sort of almost a political statement plus a sort of saying the system, whatever sort of happened was so heavy that like, let's move towards people into humans and to being together intentionally and focus on some of those more, I would say, human values. But yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Esteban. But Paul, Rob, Andrea, Peter, do you guys want to jump in on the conversation? I was just to recap, if you didn't hear, I was sharing from the beginning that this is kind of a discussion about the future of cities, a little bit post-COVID, that we've been shoved into, and a lot of people have been shoved into remote space. So I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about where they live, have they rethought where they want to live, and just get some ideas on that. I'm going to try to pull people in if they can. Although it's hard to tell if someone just accidentally left their Zoom on or if they're actually connected. If not, we're just going to keep getting to know you, Lily and Esteban.
I'd love that.
It'll just be us three. Actually, I would love to hear about you and what you work on, if you work in this area, or you, yeah, what are you working on? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's good to meet you, Esteban, as well. And I
too.
thought, I work with Dr. Otto Schammer on Theory U, and also with Salim Ismail on exponential organizations and Exo World. That's what his new gig is, right? Like in 3 weeks, they pull together this global online, thing with 130 speakers or something, and thousands of participants. It was quite impressive. And I'm always interested in awareness-based system, because we all know that in the 40s and 60s, last century, the Macy's conference sort of did a, we consciously chose the statistics-based AI path rather than this cybernetics path, which is, connecting what the general will with your system, right? Keep it, going and developing, rather than just manipulating the data on the top, right? Manipulating the system and the data on the top. I think in the last century, we consciously chose the statistically based AI path. And that has like really kind of amplified a lot of the problems in the world. And I'm very much interested in coming back into the emergence and the general will and the phenomena and what is really happening. And then to continuously doing this like agile DevOps sort of a process to allow the system to have awareness, and to do to allow machine learning and technology to help with that interface, right? The system and the general will to help with that interface. And I think that's really it's a big topic in these specialized groups right now. And so I'm very much interested in system and technology empowered system. Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting. Yeah. I love that a lot. Were you working on something like this? Like, have you been working on this for a long time, or is this something newer?
I've been working with Otto for 7 years.
Okay.
So the awareness-based system stuff. And with Salim, I knew his work and our connection, it's recent, like, since this year, basically. I'm also part of the Exo World group as well.
Okay.
Mm.
Cool. Yeah, I'm learning a little bit about that just from you right now. It's so interesting to hear.
Yeah, it is super interesting. And I think that rather than pretending to know that we all know the answer, like, I think nobody knows the answer, right? Like we
Yeah.
should dive back into the action research / action learning sort of lab environment and
Totally.
really, yeah, totally, like, rewarding attention, rewarding awareness, rewarding this kind of, alignment, crystallization, of the new paradigm. And it's really interesting because the reason I really love Bali is because it's on the opposite side of Silicon Valley and is representing a different way of interpreting, for example, well-being and happiness, right? Because in Bali, you have Pita Karana, which means the harmony between yourself and the creator, harmony between yourself and each other, and harmony between self and nature, right?
Yeah.
So so the Eastern perspective for harmony, for happiness, is actually harmony, is relational, right? Versus the West is more about a measurable point, right? And I felt like it's very interesting to, for me to come back to my Asian root as well, to like really kind of dive back into that and like, and to allow all this different really interesting technology, right? Whether it's a bio or digital, to like, yeah, help us with that extended intelligence.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think this time is so interesting too, because we're sort of forced to slow down, especially in the West. We're forced to like not move around. Like we're so used to like going and traveling and making plans and taking advantage, right? Like of every single second we have. And then, there's this thing where it's like, no, you must stay in one place. You must sort of slow down and like you know, you're sort of stuck with your whatever space you're in, whatever head you're in with your anxiety, and like, okay, now we're all watching all the like you know, the meditations, the things to just find inner peace no matter where we are, and sort of not running around and doing things. And so this sort of, I think it's a really interesting moment, because I think a lot of these why questions, even as this conversation started, like, you know, the popping up of why do I live where I live now that like so much has changed, it just sort of, there's a moment to reflect, and there's a moment to say, what does harmony with the earth look like if I actually maybe do care about climate change? What does harmony with my neighbors mean if I live in a big city, or maybe I actually would like, you know, whatever. And what does that mean with myself now that it's like, it's me in my home and that's all I've got. I don't have something to distract me necessarily besides Netflix. So I think it's such an interesting, as you sort of think of that relational, I say almost like evolution, right? Of to be able to have those things and see value in that, and see ways where we can sort of study how to do that, and how do we reward that. You know, I find academia, or places where this, even spiritual places where this is studied, it's sort of like between public sector, sometimes they still sort of miss each other, right? They still are kind of building some, in some ways, different worlds. And so now I wonder if there's a way, or there's a moment to pause where there's a moment to be able to have more overlap. I'm not sure if you've seen any of that.
Yeah. You know, there's always this healthy dichotomy between efficiency and diversity, right? Or, you know, the manifested and unmanifested, or whatever. You know, you can always do this, you know, and I just feel like the pendulum is like swinging back and trying to self-correct a little bit. And you know, comes with that is going to be a huge wave of a new kind of financial / business you know, paradigm. Also, we have to take consideration of the extreme weather, because I think in the next decade or two, a lot of part of the world is going to be inhabitable with extreme heat, earthquake, and tsunami. You know, like, you know, for example, Japan, right? Like, I've heard crazy predictions that half of the Japan is going to be underwater, you know, in 2 decades. So, like, you know, yeah, I feel that you know, it's like, you know, in the previous session with the Ricky, you know, like in this conference, he's saying like, how can we reward people for spending money, right? Or in energy field, how can we reward people for not spending energy? You know, like all those like questions, I think are really interesting, and we should probably, I think these kind of conference is really healthy, right? Like I get to know you, I get to know Esteban, and I saw Jenna join us as well, and I saw Jenna in the other session as well.
Hi, Jenna.
Yeah, so it's super cool that we get to like connect in this way. And
yeah, for sure.
And you know, and cooking, what's emerging, right? Because we all come from different discipline, and then we like crystallize together. I think this should be rewarded and, you know, amplified somehow.
I agree. Yeah. And Jenna, I'd love to hear your perspective. We started kind of with what's happening in our cities, what's changing in the cities, how we sort of think cities and living might change. And then now, since it's 4 of us, we've gone to open floor discussion.
I love it. I love it. And it's fun. I gave one of the talks earlier today, and I was like, now I get to like see what other people are talking about. I really want to share something that came to mind when you both were just talking, that I read in a book very recently, and it was about the difference. So kind of like that dichotomy between the 2 different ways of functioning. Are you still with me, or did I lose you?
No, we're here. I think your video is frozen, but your voice is clear.
Cool. So it's because I'm looking at something on my phone. So sorry, but listen to this. The ancient Greeks saw existence as a contest between nomos, which is rationality, order, and artifice, and physis, which is irrationality, chaos, and nature. Nomos is the postmodern philosopher who argues that the entire landscape is constructed, that it has no essential innate qualities, but is simply a reflection of chance and human action. Nomos says that no one ecological state is inherently preferable to any other, but that all of them are a product of human choices.
Uh-oh. We lost her.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I
Now
have
it's a cliffhanger.
have her contact. We should get another a conversation going or something, just people who are interested.
Yeah.
And, it would be super cool. Yeah.
I think it would be good too. I mean, I enjoy I've listened in some specific chats too, and I've enjoyed some of the learning capabilities. But yeah, I find just dialogue, for me at least, is where I learn the most, and hearing other people's perspectives. But Esteban, have you heard that quote before, since you've seen the
nomos
Greek?
one, the Greek philosophy?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, interesting.
I wanted to hear I literally just Googled nomos.
Lily, are you doing a chat at all? Are you giving one or hosting one?
No, I told Michael I want to learn, so I didn't say. So I signed up. I didn't sign up to give a speech, but yeah. I find this. I mean, like I was asking Michael, right? I was like, sometimes the connection is on and off, it's unstable, la la la, and he's like, yeah, that's life. I'm like, raw, and it's like. Jenna, we were fascinated.
Jenna, you're back.
About your quotes. We were fascinated.
Greek.
Did you hear any of that, or did I just like I felt like at a certain point I was like, shit, am I reading to myself? And then you guys were there. I'm like, okay, and I like continued going, and then it just like, when did it cut? Did you hear any of that?
Yeah, we heard the first sort of literal explanation of the two words, and then you went into like the more modern day extension explanation, and it cut off at this, like, so the nomos, and then it cut off at the second one.
Okay. Well, basically it's like an updated version of yin versus yang, but in the context of like societal structures, right? That's basically all you need to know. But I thought, it came to mind when I was hearing both of you talk about that. Like, what does it look like? And I love what you said about kind of like, why do I live where I live now, right? When like everything's stripped back in this way. I think about it a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, deciding where I'm going to go next, because I'm currently in Canada, but I live nomadically. So I'm like, should I stay in Canada? Like, we will see, right? What do cities have to offer us now? And I'm sad that I missed the beginning of your talk. But yeah, what do cities have to offer us now? Like, how do we find connection in more of these types of ways? And what are we losing, and how do we make sure that we don't lose the good that we're losing,
Yeah, I know. I think it's such a mirror to ask us these questions of what, even if you are more nomadic, I find I'm a bit more nomadic than maybe the average person. I was saying I've lived in I pretty much have moved cities every 2 years. It just has been my thing since I graduated college, but now feeling an interest to dig deeper roots, but then also having this mirror, I sort of, it still asks the question, the question's still there. And I know my time is up, I think in 1 minute, but Jenna, we can find each other's emails or connect some other way too, to keep talking. I'd love to hear more of your thoughts as you go through that.
Yeah, we'd love to. Let's do it.
We can share in the chat our contact. I have
I'll share mine. right now.
This is super cool. I felt like this is one of the, you know, gift, like best sessions because you get.
Oh,
Yeah,
I,
the discussion part is fun, just to
It's
see where
fun,
people are
right?
at, where they think about living. Because
Yeah.
I'm curious in it if COVID switched where you plan on going next, you know, because that's sort of what we've been chatting about of like city versus rural versus like peripheral cities, right? Like I want to be driving distance to an airport.
Yeah. I think Bali is a good place for a few years, and it's gonna get really hot, and then I think Australia will be good. Yeah.
I love that.
Well,
I will
you
have to
have
put
to
that.
think
I'll
about, you
talk
have
about
to
this.
think about the earthquake and tsunami. It's real. It's not joke. You
Yeah.
know, and extreme
Yeah,
weather. It's coming. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone. I put my email here. And so Lily, reach out. Jenna, I've got yours. Thanks, Esteban. I have your info already, but I appreciate
Absolutely.
the great conversation, everyone.
Oh, Jason is
Right.
on. That's super